Stop chasing him. It's making him ignore you. You think you are fighting for him, showing interest, proving you care. But what if I told you that every time you run after him, you are teaching him to ignore you? Look at what is happening. You send a message. He takes hours to reply. You try again. He gives you the minimum. You keep the conversation alive. He lets it die. And still, you stay there, trying to fix something that feels like it is slipping away. This is not bad luck. This is not coincidence. This is a pattern. The more you chase, the less he feels the need to move. Not because you are not enough, but because you removed the effort from his side. You gave attention before he had to earn it. You showed interest before he had the chance to miss you. You made yourself available before he even thought about losing you. And that changes everything. Because attraction is not built on constant presence. It is built on emotional tension, on space, on the possibility of loss. Right now, he does not feel that. He feels certainty. He knows you will be there. He knows you will reply. He knows he does not have to do much to keep you around. And when someone feels that safe without investing, they stop trying. That is when the distance begins. You feel it, but instead of stepping back, you move closer. You try harder. You give more. And every extra step you take pushes him one step further away. This is where most women get trapped. They think the solution is more effort, more presence, more attention. But the truth is the opposite. What is making him ignore you is not what you lack. It is what you are giving too much of. And once you see this clearly, you cannot unsee it. Because everything you thought was bringing him closer might be the exact reason he is drifting away. The paradox of effort. You were told that if you show more, care more, give more, he will value you more. It sounds logical. It feels right. But in real emotional dynamics, it works in the opposite direction. The more you try to secure his attention, the less he feels the need to invest. Think about it. When you are always the one starting conversations, he never has to think about you first. When you respond instantly every time, he never experiences waiting. When you keep things alive no matter how little he gives, he never feels the pressure to step up. You are removing the gap where desire is created. Attraction does not grow in constant availability. It grows in uncertainty, in the space where he has to wonder, where he has to reach, where he has to feel that you are not guaranteed. But you eliminated that space. You gave him emotional comfort without requiring emotional effort. And comfort without effort leads to complacency. This is the paradox. What you believe is making you more valuable is actually making you easier to overlook. Not because you lack something, but because you made access to you too simple, too predictable, too constant. He does not feel the need to pursue what is already in his hands. And here is the uncomfortable part. The more you notice him pulling away, the more you try to fix it with the same behavior that caused it. You double your effort, thinking this time it will work. But it only reinforces the pattern. He gives less, you give more. He steps back, you step forward. And slowly, without realizing, you are carrying the entire connection alone. This is not about stopping care. It is about understanding that effort only has value when it is matched. And if it is not, your effort stops being attractive and starts becoming invisible. That is the moment when something inside him shifts. And that shift is exactly what you need to understand next. The invisible mechanism that makes him ignore you. There is something happening underneath everything you see. It is not obvious, but it controls how he reacts to you. When you are always present, always available, always responding, you remove uncertainty from the connection. And when uncertainty disappears, attention follows. The human mind is wired to focus on what is not fully accessible. What feels slightly out of reach creates tension. That tension creates interest, and interest drives action. But when you are constantly there, he does not need to think about you. You are already in front of him. There is no gap to fill, no question to answer, no curiosity to resolve. You became predictable. And predictability is silent. It does not create urgency. It does not trigger movement. It keeps things stable, but it also keeps them stagnant. That is why he starts replying less, not because he decided to ignore you, but because his mind is no longer being pulled toward you. There is nothing pulling him. No absence. No mystery. No emotional tension. You removed all of it without realizing. And here is the part that changes everything. You think he is losing interest because of something you did wrong, something you said, something you failed to give. But the real reason is much simpler. He is not feeling the need to move, because you are already doing it for both of you. You are initiating. You are maintaining. You are carrying the emotional weight of the connection. And when one person carries everything, the other naturally steps back. Not always intentionally, not always consciously, but consistently. This is the invisible mechanism. You are not being ignored because you are not enough. You are being ignored because there is no space left for him to step in. And the moment you create that space, everything starts to shift. But there is a reason why you keep filling that space, even when it hurts you. And that is what you need to face next. The addiction to validation. You say you are just trying to understand him, trying to make things work, trying to keep the connection alive. But if you look deeper, there is something else driving your behavior. You are trying to feel okay again. Every time you send a message, you are not just talking to him. You are trying to relieve the discomfort inside you. The silence makes you anxious. The delay makes you question yourself. The distance makes you feel like you are losing control. So you act, not because it is the best move, but because it gives you temporary relief. When he replies, even with the minimum, you feel better for a moment. You feel seen again, validated, reassured. And that feeling becomes addictive. You start needing his response to stabilize your emotions. Your mood begins to depend on his attention. If he answers, you feel good. If he disappears, you feel restless. This is where the dynamic becomes dangerous. Because now, you are not choosing to engage. You are reacting. You are no longer in control of your actions. Your need for validation is controlling you. And that need pushes you to do exactly what weakens your position. You reach out when you should step back. You give when you should observe. You insist when you should allow space. And the more you do this, the more he feels that you are already emotionally invested, regardless of what he gives. That removes the challenge. That removes the tension. And without tension, there is no reason for him to move toward you. So what feels like care is actually dependency. What feels like effort is actually emotional reaction. And what feels like connection is often just you trying to regulate your own anxiety through him. Once you see this, everything becomes clearer. Because now the question is not what he is doing. It is why you keep doing what hurts you. And that answer leads directly to the moment where everything starts to change. The moment you lose your value. It does not happen all at once. There is no single mistake that makes him pull away. It happens in small moments you barely notice. You reply instantly every time, even when he takes hours. You keep the conversation alive when he lets it fade. You show excitement when he gives you the minimum. You stay consistent, even when he is not. And little by little, something shifts. Not in what you feel, but in how he perceives you. Because value is not just about who you are. It is about how your presence is experienced. When you are always available, your presence becomes expected. When it is expected, it loses impact. When it loses impact, it stops being felt. And when it stops being felt, it stops being valued. You did not lose value as a person. You lost perceived value in the dynamic. And that difference is everything. He no longer feels the need to earn your attention. He no longer feels the risk of losing you. He no longer feels the urgency to invest. Because from his perspective, you are already there. Always ready, always responding, always staying. And here's the part that hurts the most. You think you are showing consistency, loyalty, interest. But what he experiences is predictability without consequence. He can delay, he can disappear, he can give little, and nothing changes. You are still there. That is the moment your value drops in his perception. Not because you are less, but because access to you became effortless. And when something feels effortless, it stops being pursued. This is where most women try to fix things by giving more. More attention, more effort, more presence. But that only pushes your value lower, because now you are reinforcing the same pattern that made him step back. So if giving more is not the answer, what is? The answer is not doing more. It is doing something completely different. And that shift starts with one move that changes everything. The silence that repositions you. This is where everything changes, but only if you understand it the right way. Silence is not about ignoring him to make him react. It is about stopping the behavior that made him stop valuing you. When you stop reaching out, something uncomfortable happens. Not for him at first. For you. You feel the urge to check your phone, to send something casual, to keep the connection alive. That impulse is not love, it is habit. And breaking that habit is the first step. Because the moment you stop feeding the dynamic loses its balance. You were the one maintaining the flow. You were the one creating movement. When you step back, there is a gap. And that gap is where your position begins to change. But here is the difference most people do not understand. Weak silence is waiting. Strong silence is detachment. If you are silent while obsessing over him, nothing changes. The moment he comes back, you collapse into the same pattern. But when your silence comes from control, from self-respect, from not needing immediate validation, it feels different. He senses it. He notices the absence not just in messages, but in energy. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer chasing. You are no longer trying to hold something together. And that creates something new. Uncertainty. He starts wondering. He starts noticing the difference. He starts feeling the space that did not exist before. And that space has weight. Because now, for the first time, you are not predictable. And unpredictability creates attention. Attention creates curiosity. Curiosity creates movement. But what happens inside his mind when that movement starts is what determines everything next. What happens in his mind when you stop chasing? At first, nothing happens on the outside. No message, no reaction, no sudden change. And this is where most women panic and break the silence too early. But inside his mind, something already started. The first thing he feels is a disruption. You were consistent, predictable, always there. And now, you are not. His brain tries to make sense of it. Did she lose interest? Did something happen? Is she talking to someone else? These questions create something that did not exist before. Mental tension. When you were always present, he did not have to think about you. Now he does. And that thought repeats. He checks your last message. He opens the chat. He looks for signs. Not because you told him to, but because the pattern changed. Then comes curiosity. Curiosity is powerful because it pulls attention without effort. He starts imagining, filling the gaps, creating scenarios in his mind. And here is where the shift deepens. Ego. He was used to your attention, used to knowing you were there. And when that disappears, it challenges his sense of control. He wants to know if he still has access to you. Not necessarily because he misses you deeply at first, but because he feels the change. And that feeling grows. If you hold your position, if you do not rush back, if you do not give him immediate reassurance, something stronger starts to build. Desire, not forced, not artificial, felt. Because now, for the first time, he has to experience your absence long enough for it to matter. And when someone feels they might lose you, your value increases in their perception. That is when he moves. That is when he reaches out. But this is also the most dangerous moment, because what you do when he comes back will either keep your new position or destroy everything you just created. The mistake that ruins everything when he comes back. He finally texts you, and in that exact moment, everything you built starts to shake, because your instinct is immediate. You feel relief, excitement, a rush of emotion telling you to respond fast, to show interest, to reconnect like nothing happened. And that is where everything collapses. You go back to the same pattern, the same availability, the same urgency, the same emotional intensity, and he feels it instantly, that nothing really changed, that you are still there in the same way, waiting, ready, predictable. So what happens next? He relaxes again. He slows down. He pulls back. Because the tension you created disappears the moment you give full access again. This is the mistake most women make. They think the goal is to make him come back. But that is only the beginning. What matters is what you do after. You do not need to ignore him now. You need to control your response. You answer, but you do not rush. You engage, but you do not overgive. You show interest, but you do not hand him everything again. Because this is no longer about getting his attention. It is about changing the dynamic. He needs to feel that your presence is no longer guaranteed, that your time is not instantly available, that your attention has weight. And this does not come from playing games. It comes from self-control, from choosing your actions instead of reacting to your emotions. Because the truth is simple. The silence got his attention. But your behavior after that decides if you keep it. And if you understand this, you are already in a completely different position than before. Now comes the part that changes everything for real, the real shift. It was never about him. If you still think this is about making him chase you, you are missing the point that changes everything. Because the moment you had to run after him to feel secure, the imbalance was already there. You were giving more than you were receiving. You were investing more than he was. You were trying to maintain something that was not being equally sustained. And instead of stepping back, you leaned in harder. That is where you lost control. Not because of him, but because your emotional state started depending on his behavior. If he replied, you felt calm. If he disappeared, you felt anxious. If he gave attention, you felt valued. And that is a dangerous place to be. Because now your stability is not yours anymore. It is his. That is why this is not about making him come back. It is about taking yourself back, taking back your attention, taking back your energy, taking back your emotional control. Because when you stop depending on his responses, something changes inside you. You stop reacting. You start observing. You stop chasing. You start choosing. And that shift is powerful. Because now you are not trying to keep someone interested. You are deciding if they deserve your presence. That is the difference between need and power. And once you feel that, you cannot go back to the version of you who was always running. Because now you understand something clearly. The problem was never that you were not enough. The problem was that you were giving too much of yourself to someone who was not matching you. And once you correct that, everything around you starts to respond differently. The woman who doesn't chase anymore. There is a version of you that no longer feels the need to run after anyone. She does not wait for messages to feel calm. She does not overthink silence. She does not try to fix distance with more effort. And the difference is not what she does. It is how she sees herself. She knows her presence has value. She knows her attention is not something to be given without return. She understands that connection is mutual, not something she has to carry alone. So she moves differently. She does not initiate everything. She allows space. She does not respond from anxiety. She responds from choice. She does not chase attention. She attracts it by how she positions herself. And here is what changes when you become this woman. Men feel it. Not because you say anything, but because your behavior communicates something new. You are no longer predictable. You are no longer easy to access. You are no longer emotionally available to someone who is not showing up. And that creates something powerful. Respect. Because people value what they have to meet, not what is constantly reaching for them. This is not about becoming cold. It is about becoming selective. You are still open, still present, still real, but only for those who match you. And that is what shifts the dynamic completely. Because now, instead of chasing someone who is pulling away, you become someone others move toward. And when that happens, everything you used to struggle with starts to disappear naturally. But there is one last truth you need to accept if you want this change to last. The truth you must accept. There is something you need to face without softening it. If he only gives attention when you pull away, he was never truly present. He was comfortable. Comfortable receiving what you gave without having to earn it. Comfortable knowing you would stay, even when he gave little. Comfortable existing in a dynamic where you did most of the work. And the moment you stopped, he felt it. Not necessarily because of deep feelings, but because the pattern changed. This is why you cannot confuse reaction with real interest. Just because he comes back does not mean he values you the way you deserve. It means he noticed the difference. And that is where your clarity matters. Because now you have two choices. You go back to what is familiar, accept the same behavior, and repeat the cycle. Or you stay in your position and observe. Does he invest consistently? Does he meet your energy? Does he show real effort, not just temporary attention? This is the part most women avoid. They get so focused on getting him back that they forget to ask if he is worth keeping. And that is where they lose again. Because without standards, any attention feels like progress, but it is not. Real change is not him coming back. It is you, no longer accepting less than what you want. And that requires something stronger than strategy. It requires self-respect. The kind that does not bend when emotions rise. The kind that does not chase when silence appears. The kind that is willing to walk away if what is in front of you does not meet you. Because the truth is simple. Not every man deserves your presence. And once you understand that, you stop trying to convince someone to stay. You start allowing the right ones to show up, and that changes everything. Conclusion. You thought the problem was him pulling away, but now you see it differently. Every time you ran after him, every time you overgave, every time you tried to hold the connection together, you were slowly teaching him that your presence required no effort. And when something requires no effort, it loses weight. This was never about playing games. It was about breaking a pattern that was working against you. Because the moment you stopped chasing, something shifted. Not just in him, in you. You stopped reacting out of anxiety. You stopped trying to earn attention. You stopped placing your value in someone else's hands. And that is where your power returned. Some men will come back. Others will disappear. But that is not the most important part anymore. The most important part is that you will not be the same woman who runs after someone who is pulling away. You will be the woman who steps back, observes, and decides. The woman who does not need to convince anyone to stay. The woman who knows that real interest does not need to be chased. Because when you stop chasing attention, you start attracting it. Not by force, by position. Now there is something you need to understand next, because this is where most women lose even after learning everything you just saw. There is a silent mistake that makes him lose interest even when he was the one chasing you at the beginning, and almost no one talks about it. That is exactly what you need to see next.